of schools caught fire actually, and of course one would say that even till now we haven't had a report that comes out to explain the cause of the Budo fire and a number of school fires, by the way. Recently we saw on the 10th of January when we opened schools, fully reopening of schools. 9 weeks down the road, we've registered more than 10 fires. And in these, about 3, we've seen lives lost. Here we are, children are in school, and still parents now have to think between safety of children, tuition, and all these are requirements. But above all, how safe are children in these schools, and what is being done by the ministry and also by police. Now, this is what we are going to be discussing, and with me in studios, I'm honored to have, that is the spokesperson of the Ministry of Education and Sports, Dr. Dennis Mujimba. Doctor, thank you for always honoring our invitation.
Thank you, Robert, for always inviting us.
Now, Doctor, to kickstart this, from the ministry's perspective, the ministry you speak for, when we talk about just a spell of less than 10 weeks opening, you're having about 11 fires. And this at a particular time had ceased. You know, school fires were no longer rampant. Isn't this really something that causes an alarm by the ministry? And if so, what are you doing?
Thank you, Robert. It is really a great concern. One, even though the instances we've had few loss of lives, but you're having loss of property. Now, whether it is public or private property, but it is property being used by the public. And people are losing their investments. Now, the question is, why are we having these spikes? Number 2, there seems to be a pattern of the facilities that are being burnt. About, I think, 6 weeks ago, the preliminary report we got from the police was showing that about 6 out of 7 schools being burnt were private schools. So the question is, why are we having private schools more prone to incidents of fire? The other issue is you're seeing a pattern where most of these fires are coming from dormitories. The question is, why dormitories? So there is a pattern we are seeing. Now, all this is emerging in spite of the fact that there are guidelines issued by the ministry to give a semblance of safety and security in these schools. These the guidelines were jointly worked on with the Uganda Police Force and other stakeholders in government so that we can prevent or reduce the incidences of fires in our institutions. The general picture we get from our Directorate of Education and Standards, which is responsible for inspection, is that there is very weak compliance, almost weak to non-existent, whereby some schools do not even know that these guidelines exist. Now that is a bigger concern. When people are not even aware that there are measures to follow to reduce the incidence of such issues happening in the school. I'll give you one example. The first measure that was prescribed is that a school should have in place, by the way, when we are talking of schools, we are talking of all institutions of learning. You should have in place a security and safety committee. Now, the security dimension comes in because the police, which is mandated to investigate all instances of fire, even in our institutions, they found that more than 80% of these fires had a dimension of intentionality. They were not necessarily, they didn't look like an accident. So the first measure was, can each institution have security and safety committees? The Security and Safety Committee is supposed to be having composition of teachers, students, members of the community, a representative of the local police unit that is nearest to that institution, so that they regularly address compliance with these measures, but also pick up information. Because, Robert, it's interesting, there is always some leaking information around the community when an incident is going to happen. However, the school administration usually doesn't act on it. I think more fires are usually prevented than we get to know, where there is active vigilance, but others we just do not have good compliance. So those committees are not in place.
So they can feel and understand on ground that maybe there is an headmaster that left.
Exactly.
He has not gotten his pay for a long time. There's a land wrangle here.
Yes.
We better handle it before it escalates.
Exactly. Robert, you've said it right. The intentionality in some of these fires is grievances of either existing employees and students, former employees, and then other stakeholders, suppliers, where people feel they were aggrieved and the school has not settled their issue. So they end up touching the buildings to pay back or to get your attention. This information is always there in the communities. So that is why a security and safety committee is a very important body to have in that institution. And the police force sent up that guideline by the IGP. We communicated it well, but it is the first pillar, yet it is not being implemented. It is not. It doesn't cost you anything to have that committee in place. The other measure which was guided to these schools is that can you have controlled access? Now, controlled access means can you fence without even using a wall? A wall may be too expensive. You can use barbed wire. You may not fence the entire 100 acres of your land, but you can fence the part that maybe has the dormitory area or where the school premises are, the facilities, so that you get to know who is coming into the premises. When they enter, where do they go? Just put a book, have a security book where everyone who enters registers themselves. You get to know where they've gone. These are very simple, cost-effective measures, but also they are not being followed. Now, the reason why, Robert, these measures are not followed is
maybe,
that...
Doctor, let's go through them briefly, because for our viewers, they're not really many. Of these. One, organized regular fire drills. I don't know which school does that.
Now, that one, you know, that is why we say the Security and Safety Committee should have a member of the police unit closest, because the police unit is the one that should be coming and helping you with fire drills. Now, the importance of fire drills is for you to build muscle memory as an individual, to know if a fire breaks out, what do I do? Now, that is not done.
That is not
You
done.
should also have a designated fire assembly point. Sometimes students have been caught up in this fracas of you're escaping, instead you're running into another place where there is a fire. So the fire assembly points are not well designated. These are simple guidelines that were communicated to them,
but not
implemented.
Then one that I wonder why the ministry, we have only single and double decker beds.
Yes. Again, this comes to an issue of violation. And now this one you cannot blame it on outsiders. This is a deliberate decision by the administration of the school. You and I, when we were in boarding school, there were double-decker beds, and there were some single. In secondary school, there were single beds. Primary, most of them were decker beds. But there was space. There was about 1.5 meters distance between decker beds. But now, the boarding schools, some of them have triple-decker beds. The distance between the beds is even less than 2 feet. Why? Because of the issue of profits, money. Schools want to get as much money as they can by bringing in as more students they can accommodate. That is a violation. And this is where the school administration has a responsibility to say no. Yes, we need funds, but we cannot have funds at the expense of safety. Now, unfortunately, most administrations do not see that as a safety issue.
I will move at emergency exit in dormitories.
Yes.
I don't know which, if there are, then there could be very few.
And you know, an emergency exit is as simple as, where I was, like St. Brianyanji Boarding Primary School, we used only to have one entry into the dormitory. So the emergency exit is, one, you can have two entrances, and what can be done is you simply have a cutout from the wall, another door, entrance or exit. That is it.
Recently, I visited a dormitory where the emergency exit is under a lock. And I was asking now what happens. Because yes, some schools have them,
yes,
but they are strictly locked.
Now that doesn't become an emergency exit.
Then you wonder, what is that for?
Yes.
No burglar proof in doors and windows, set up safety and security committees, have firefighting equipment.
Now, let me explain on the issue of burglar proofing. Now, burglar proofing, earlier on, the intention was to prevent intrusion into the building. However, it has a safety issue, especially when you have a building that is crowded. Most of these learners who were getting trapped in fire incidents, the doors would be blocked. Remember, you have dormitories that are already crowded with triple-decker beds. Even while there are double-decker beds, they are too crowded. So the children would be stuck trying to exit through the windows, yet the windows have burglar proofing. Where I was in Buranyanji Primary School, we didn't have burglar proofing in our dormitories. The windows were just, once you open, it is clear. Now, it is for safety purposes. It may look good for you in your private house to have burglar proofing because you're fewer and you can easily get out of the house. But in a public building where you're having so many people crowded, burglar proofing of your windows poses a bigger risk to the occupants.
Now, Doctor, we've discussed these, and I want to say they are known. But then it all goes back to the stewards of education in this country, which is the Ministry of Education and Sports. Because you can reign over government and private. When we talk about education in this country, we may not think about Chirabo Secondary School. First, it goes back to your ministry. 2008 is longer time. One would say that we would expect now triple deckers could not even be manufactured anywhere in Uganda because the market would have gone. Schools that get them. We expect by now this issue of a person mingling posho during the day, then at night is the guard. That would no longer be there. We expect burglar proofing not there. So these are not so many guidelines. But where you go to a school and you find zero, where you go to our next school and there's totally nothing, is the ministry not interested? Is it because these issues of fire come and go? Because for the last maybe 5 years, we've not had this increase of fire outbreaks like it is. So they are periodically, you only act when, but there's no continuity in terms of enforcement and action?
I think you raise an issue that is, I think, a symptom. You may be seeing the symptoms within the sector, but I think it represents a lot that happens in our society. Inability to comply with what is good for you. Now, you should not really wait for the ministry to breathe down your neck. For example, having in place a security and safety committee. Do you really need someone to tell you to come and breathe down your neck that you have it in place? Just appreciate the benefits. We do our monitoring and our supervision. We submit these reports to the relevant authorities. One, for the primary schools, the local governments do that part. So the question should be, what is the local government leadership doing about that? Because the leadership, the political leadership of the local government is the LC5 for the district. The technical leadership is by the CAO. What is being done with those inspection reports? Why are we seeing a spike in fires in private schools? The challenge with the private schools, the occupants of buildings is done without a permit of occupants. Because a permit of occupants should certify that the basic standard, first of all, you follow the building plans and the basic safety measures have been adhered to. But now if Robert starts his school, you put up your buildings, you are occupying them, bringing in the public, who are the learners, and you even don't have an occupancy permit. But the occupancy permit is issued by the local government. So when the local governments go in to inspect the schools, these are the issues they are supposed to bring in. So yes, there is a role, not just as a Minister of Education, but at government as a whole, because the local governments are under the Minister of Local Government. You have the National Building Review Board, which is under the Minister of Works. You have Internal Affairs, which is for police. So all of us have to work together. What do we do when the police gives us these reports? What do we do when the police force issues these guidelines to the schools? Are we there as local government to help enforce these measures? So I think it is a broader discussion.
But
that
Doctor,
is
one
beyond,
would say
yes,
these are licensed by the ministry, the schools, and recently we heard, but you explained it very well, there was panic. Like we are going to open, they have told us about issues of our licenses. So I believe the local government has a role to play.
Yes.
But as the Ministry of Education and Sports, the licensing body, in my opinion, I think you play a better role than any other we can talk about, because you choose to license or not, and without a license, no school would then be functioning, and we have such challenges.
You're right. One of the gaps, because these guidelines that were issued in almost 14 years ago, now we realize that they need to be updated. And part of updating them is also revising the license to ensure that it captures such. For example, the current licensing regime for the private education service providers does not require that you must present a building occupancy permit. So now I could license you as a ministry or local government, because local government licenses the primary and pre-primary schools. They can license you, but without necessarily looking at the building permit, because it's not one of the licensing requirements. So as a ministry, we are saying these guidelines need to be reviewed, and already the process is underway of updating them. And those are some of the things we are going to update the licensing regime for the private education service providers with. Before you even have your license renewed, please prove that you have safety measures in place. I visited 12 institutions in different parts of the country. One of the requirements is that you should have firefighting equipment. You can have sand, you can have the fire extinguishers. Now, all these 12 I visited, they had fire extinguishers in place, but all of them were expired. Now, the question is, an expired fire extinguisher, what service does it give you? So it is not just an issue of a semblance of measures being put in place, but they should be actively implemented. Then the other one...
Well, before that, Doctor, maybe let me remind our viewers that we are expecting to have the head that is of fire and rescue services, Uganda Police, as we discuss this, and he'll be joining us very soon. So let's go for that break so that we can have him on set.
Live from Now Avenue in UBC Studios. This is Good Morning Uganda.
There have always been hard times, but these days are harder than most. Everyone is hurting. Everyone needs help. But some among us are asking the question, what if we didn't have to go through life's hardest moments alone? What if we were in it together? And just by asking that question, he changed my son's life. He created an online crowdfunding platform for Ugandans to help raise money for each other.
Thank you, Nixon, for helping me. This is a story of a regular Ugandan just like you, who harnessed the power of technology to provide a solution for us. How about you tell us your story? UG needs more of you. To share your story, visit airtel.co.ug/UG needs more of you or call or SMS 162. Airtel, the smartphone network.
COVID-19 is still here with us. As Professor Maggie Chigozi states, the time is now for all of us to get vaccinated.
When we have one person who's not vaccinated, it affects everybody around them, most especially the ones close to you. Keep your family safe. Anyone right now who's over 18 should go and get vaccinated.
Because of the new COVID-19 circulating variants like Omicron, it is very important for all of us to be fully vaccinated with 2 doses of the same vaccine type. It's only those getting Johnson & Johnson who receive only a single dose to be fully protected.
Even after vaccination, continue to adhere to all SOPs by wearing a mask properly, covering your mouth and nose, washing your hands regularly with soap and clean water or using an alcohol-based sanitizer, maintaining physical distance of at least 2 meters from others and avoiding crowds. Echa COVID-19, chija kugwa. This message is from the Ministry of Health with support from UNICEF and partners.
Thank you so much for keeping it with us here on UBC TV. We are still discussing controlling fire outbreaks in schools. Like we told you earlier on, that just barely 10 weeks from the opening of schools, that was on the 10th of January, we've registered more than 10 fires. And in these fires, we've seen lives lost. About 5 or 6 lives have been lost of pupils gutted in this fire that called dormitories. Now with me on set, we have the spokesperson of the Ministry of Education and Sports, Dr. Dennis Mujimba, whom we've been with and of course discussed a few issues, and we are joined by the Deputy, Deputy Director of Fire Prevention and Rescue Services, Uganda Police Force, Assistant Commissioner of Police, Kihanda Hassan. Now this man, I've known him as a field man. For the last maybe 6 years. I remember one of the fires that I first encountered him was the one that gutted Charm Towers, the basement.
True.
And he was the man telling us journalists don't enter there. Even us, the pressure is still high. So I'm happy to have you now on set, and thank you for being a practical man.
Thank you.
Any fire that has happened, Chihanda has not missed. He will give the journalists the information they need to know. He is there practically, wet and struggling. Thank you for that work. It's not very easy.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, at least I've seen it happen, what people go through. Now, Hassan, when we talk about these fires, as police, one is wondering, why are they rampant at such a time? 2008, yes, we had fire after fire.
True.
Then there was a period where fires as a result of arson, electricity and all that. But now, this time, we are seeing fire after fire from the police perspective.
That's true, but for the schools currently, majority of these fires are either arson fires or they are negligent activities. Like the other day, there was a school where we lost 4 children at Chibedi in Kawempe here. You'd vividly see there was rubbish burning near the door, the dormitory. You know, that one, it's not the first time it is causing fires. Once there is rubbish and the window is open, there is wind. It can easily take, and you'll check a fire there. But the majority of these fires have been caused by deliberate burning.
Deliberate burning?
By 2, either outsiders or insiders. Even the other 2 days, there was a school where the mattress had caught fire. Yes, just. So these are deliberate fires. But we are definitely trying by all means to advise the administrators of these schools. Because all in all, number one, you need to vet the people who work for you, your workers, vetting them to know who you actually have. you might be having hyenas dressed in human flesh, claiming to be people when actually they are not. They are the ones planning all these things. That is number one. Number two, in doing the guidelines we gave them. The school, we gave them guidelines. For example, school must have, say, a fence. That fence defines the territory of the school so that we can abrogate strangers. If you enter into the school when you are not authorized to be there, you pass this gate, you pass this fence, then you become a trespasser. We can easily dig you out. We said now, not only that, once you put the fence, you put the gate, you get trained people as guards.
Most schools, I know, a person is mingling posho. A doctor, you can allude to this fact.
Yes.
The man during that day, he's
Yes.
either the cleaner, then at night he gets a torch, a bow and arrow, then
to go and guard.
some jacket.
But now guarding is not for everybody. We are trained. We get the eyes used, that I can sit around you for 1 day, for 2 days, for 3 days, and you're asking, doesn't this man does? That is a training we go through. But now you are bringing a guard, before you sleep, for him he's already snoring. Who is guarding who? Is it you guarding him,
Some
or is
even
one guarding you?
consume some waraji to keep them awake. And
That-
as
But the waraji will make him again sleep.
Sleep.
So these are some of the challenges. One, we said they must put the fences, put the gates, put trained people as guards. For us in today's policing, we walk our beats. Walking your beat, this thing of sitting and then you make a fall in security, and at some time back. Because you will sit at the gate, you make a fall, somebody will break into the fence the other side, he will enter and destroy whatever he wants to destroy, and he goes away. Also the use of these cameras, the use of cameras is also important. It gives us a clue on some of these some of these issues.
Now, Hassan, I'm going to ask you a question
Yes.
that I also put to doctor, but that was for the Ministry of Education and Sports.
Yes.
Now to police. You see, these guidelines have been around
Yes.
for a long time.
Yeah.
And the police, unlike doctor, maybe, who if he enters a premises, he has to introduce himself. For you, little introduction. Person will know this is a police officer, is an enforcer of the law. But I think there is so much lamenting. What action have you done when you've been at the forefront? We thank the Lord, and we still, because I've seen officers sometimes in these fires. I remember the Buddha, those that even sustained scars.
Yes.
You know, so what have you done when you know fire extinguishers are not in these schools? The sitting at making a fall is the order of the day, and all we see is, oh, a school has caught fire.
Yes.
Then we start, fire brigade arrived late.
Very good.
They would have rescued.
That
so
is it.
we need to end this lamentation, the book of lamentations, and now move to actions. 14 years down the road, we are not seeing meaningful action from police.
Thank you very much. The police does its part. Now, we have different parts. Good enough, I have the spokesperson of the Ministry of Education here. We have what we call the basic safety and health and safety requirements for schools. The ministry has put them in place. Those are implemented by the inspectorate of the Ministry of Education.
So now, Dr. Mujimba, okay.
Even when you are giving licenses to these private schools, it is after ensuring that they have really fulfilled those basic health and safety requirements. Okay? Whereas, for me, I'm not obliged to close a school. The Ministry of Education is obliged. But for you today, you have made it complete. You have brought two people together, the Ministry of Education and the police.
You want to see where the weakness.
If this was in the operations, even things would be moving on well. Yes, and I would still recommend, since I have my colleague here, that we need to come together and do the same thing together. That would help us.
Doctor, it comes back to you.
Yes, so what CP has said is actually correct. In the basic requirements and minimum standards, which we call the BRMS checklist. This is a checklist that the Directorate of Education Standards uses when they go out to do their work to assess ABCD in place. Now, as I told you, an example of the 12 institutions I visited where they had the fire extinguishers in place, but all of them were expired. So now they write a report and tell you, the head of the institution, ABCD need to be rectified. Now, of course, inspection is not done daily, but monitoring, self-monitoring should be done daily at the institution level. Now, when they come back and they find repetitive incidents, then of course that reflects badly on the head of institution, because now that report will go and say, we periodically inspected and this school is consistently behind on ABC, or not even following up. Okay? Now that impacts you, but it's not punitive. So I think what the public has been saying, what we hear is, because of the gravity of the fires, can we categorize certain penalties for violators or people who neglect? Because some of these are really acts of negligence. As I told you, for example, the police, the guidelines were clear. Put in place a security and safety committee in the school. You don't even have that. The other one was, make sure that you have supervision of who comes in and gets out. You don't have that measure at all. Now, that is negligence. Now, what we are saying is, what punishments should be dished out under those guidelines? Because though the guidelines are there, they are not prescribing, if you violate those guidelines, what penalty should you have? Oh. That one was not spelled out. And you know, when you're dealing with society, you have to have frameworks that guide in discipline. You cannot just wake up and now begin dismissing or penalizing or suspending head teachers for not following guidelines when you did not prescribe the penalties they will get. So that is a weakness that we have identified. However, the bottom line is this. I think what we need to do as a public is to move people away from acting because of fear of the law, but acting because of the good. Now, what do I mean here? We need to continuously sensitize. We have realized that the spike in awareness or sensitization about safety in schools usually comes when there are school fires. But we never even carry out fire drills in our institutions. Yet a fire drill, you should not do it because you're at risk. It is good for you to be doing fire drills in any workplace, even in your home. The other issue is just surveillance. You can have CCTV, but the police guidelines at that time of 2008 said the school should also have in place, among the crime prevention measures, of physical surveillance. Have a schedule where students, teachers can just walk around, just around the facilities, the premises, to see what is going on. Because the police, in their reports, investigations, they found a pattern when these fires tend to occur. For example, fires don't usually come at midnight. They're usually 5 to 6, then I think 8 to 10. That's specific windows. Now the question is, why those windows? There is intentionality in some of these things. So that's why the police said the school should have in place a schedule where you involve even the students themselves. The public needs to take the issues of security and safety in their hands and know they have a role to play. You're not just going to rely on the guards. The guards may be sleeping. The guards they can walk around at night, but during the day, walk around. And you have 300 students in the school. You have 30 teachers. Surely, you can move around and monitor what is happening in these dormitories.
Well, Hassan, I want to bring you here in terms of rescue.
Yes.
At Crested, we lost lives.
True.
At Chotera, we lost lives.
Yeah.
How equipped is your director? Because most of the times when fires occur, there is this, had they come a bit earlier? Maybe property would not have been lost to this extent. Some are rude to the fact that maybe lives will also not have been lost. Because if you put out a fire, you can easily find a young girl or a young boy, most of these junior schools, the primary, who is maybe suffocated or intimidated even to make any step and rescue this. How equipped are you people? You're so much of late comers.
Thank you very much. I want to assure you that we are very equipped. Take, for example, the city center. You may oppose, but I'm giving you news now.
Depending on what, when I go to cover these fires, what I hear.
I'm now telling you what happens with the fires. Number one, the equipment first. Like the city center. We have a station in Kawempe. We have a station in Boyogerere. We have a station in Natet. We have a station in Kororo. We have a station in Kajansi. We have a station in Nansana. We have a station at fire headquarters. We have enough of these facilities. Number one, we are not omnipresent. You inform us, we come. We cannot know that there is a fire, for example, at UBC when we have not been called. We are in confined spaces. But in most cases, when these emergencies occur, people first think about what they can do themselves. It is when they fail that they resort to us. However, just like the doctor said, number one, we are doing a lot of sensitizations. Just like when you are here now, you have also done your part. We do what we call emergency action plan. The emergency action plan of any facility emphasizes that, because for us, our aim of the directive number one is fire prevention. When we try to prevent fires through this teaching, through inspections, through sensitizations out, and eventually the fire occurs, our next objective is saving lives. So saving lives is all about evacuation. Evacuation is all about the mastering the game of the emergency action plan. When there is an emergency, you see an emergency. What is expected of you? You expected, if there are these sophisticated manual call points that you break glass and it triggers an alarm, you do that. If it's not there, you sound your own alarm. You can shout out the emergency, say fire, fire, fire. This is the purpose of this, is to ensure that all other people here, so that they are not caught unawares. The principle we teach is that you also, once you hear that, you get out through the nearest exit to the assembly point. And you remain there until when you are roll called for accountability purposes and debriefed by the operation commander. Look, this is what has happened, and this is now the situation. You can go back, there is no cause for alarm, or you can keep away until we put the situation in order. So that one is not done by us. It is done by the management. Fire safety is everybody's responsibility. The students, for example, school has a role to play by, say, identifying strangers, reporting colleagues who are planning to do adverse things, because a student cannot just wake up and ban. You will first say, they punished him, he wants revenge. You say, they will see me. They will see me. A fellow student who hears can be able to tell the management. Somebody has said the school will see him. So that one is there. That is part by the students. A student who will go and start playing with electrical equipment when he has never been into a class of electricity, the student can report him. Because your role is to sleep. Once there is a fault, you report to the administration. They bring the right administrator to, the right person, the electrician, to put it right. So all those are roles of the students. The teachers will check for the students on arrival, what have they come with, so that unnecessary things are not brought into the what? The dormitory. The administration will put in place the facilities, like the fences we are talking about, and then the generators. Because you say, no, a school must have electricity and an alternative generator. Once the power goes off, don't allow those naked lights, like the candles, like the hurricane lamps and whatever, because all of those have smoke that will throw you into sleep. So once you put a candle, the smoke will throw you into sleep, and you just, the way you kick it, you don't care. So everybody has a role to play there. But the school management must master the emergency action plan. On site of an emergency, make an alarm to alert your colleagues that there is an emergency.
Doctor, when we listen to this, I think they are sweet to hear. we are using should, must. Should, must. He's used the same, you're using the same. But in the interest of time, how do we end the should, must, and now move into we have in place?
Thank you. I think the key thing we need to do as a ministry is to ensure that when we do our inspection, the reports, we should give back the reports of our findings to the centers that are responsible for taking action. For the schools within our local governments, let us submit the reports to the local governments, telling the CAO, this is the school that has issues, ABCD, regarding security and safety. Number two, we need to invest in continuously training our school management, the head teachers, to be aware of these guidelines. I told you these guidelines are 14 years old. Since they were issued by the IGP, and we rolled them out together with the police force, there has been turnover in terms of retirement. New leadership has come in, and they are actually not aware that these guidelines exist. However, as you well know, there is what we call continuous professional development for any cadre. Now, I think part of the school management, there should be continuous refresher trainings on emergency and safety issues within a school setting. By that, you build what I called earlier on muscle memory. Let there be drills, let there be fire drills. In high school, where I went, we used to have fire drills every term. And sometimes the fire drill will actually come on at 3 a.m. because they will tell you a fire does not give you an announcement when it will come. So would get out, rush to the fire assembly point, and as ACP was saying, a roll call will be taken. Now, the roll call was not for getting students who are away out of school, but it makes you realize that you need to be able to account for every life that was in that dormitory. Now, those are simple, they look simple, but they do a lot in preventing loss of lives during an incident of fire. So, but all this, what we are talking about, you're saying we move from should to must. It begins with the training. Training, training, training. And it has to start at the center of the service delivery, which is the school. Now, we have more than 12,000 primary schools. We have over 5,000 secondary schools. We have over 200 tertiary institutions. We are not saying that everyone should be having a police office attached to it. It is now upon the heads of these institutions to request for help. We need training, we need drills, we need help us. And that help can be given because there are even private service providers in firefighting services who can actually come and give and help you train. So training is very key because, Robert, whatever we say, people will always practice what they've been taught, informally or formally. When you're not taught about security and safety in a public institution setting, you tend to take these things for granted. Thank you.
Well, thank you. From the ministry, Afande Hassan, the field man.
Yes.
The man, you're always the person in most of these fires to go and lead your team into this. What are your final remarks to ensure that we break this continuous race in fire incidents? Like we had a period of about 5-6 years back. This is something that had gone.
True.
What should be done?
Yeah, just like the doctor has insinuated, me, I would believe before we allow these people to call us. Now, the districts have got, is it the district inspector of schools and what have we?
Yes.
Can we always have seminars for these head teachers? If there's a workshop, for example, if the EE of a school says, I want all the head teachers today.
The district education officer.
Yes, can say, I need all the head teachers today in a workshop. Then one of our people can go and talk to them. Perhaps that creates an insight in them of what is what is necessary of them. Some of them don't know the implications, for example, of a school fire at your school. They don't know it. Once they are taken into that, and then they are taken into what they ought to do and how they will be held responsible for negligence of some of these, then they will wake up and it's now start calling individual school, can say, please, can we have someone to do this? Because you have sensitized the head teacher. The head teacher has seen the essence of this fire safety in his school, then he can now call for someone to come and do it. The private players have done it. There's this man called, is it Ham Skills? I remember one time he called us at Rubaga, Popol. He had mobilized all heads of private institutions that they give bursaries to the students. In that program, he asked us to talk to them. Yes, you are giving bursaries to the students, but we need the students safe. So we took them through the fire safety in these schools. So that is what I would also expect the Ministry of Education to say. The district heads of education call the different head teachers in a workshop. Then one person can go in and talk to them. We are at your disposal.
Well, I want to thank you so much, gentlemen. That is the spokesperson of the Ministry of Education and Sports, Dr. Dennis Mujimba, for always honoring our invitation. Thank you so much. And that is Assistant Commissioner of Police, Hassan Chihanda, who is also the Deputy Director, Fire Prevention and Rescue Services, for finding time and coming and giving us some of these tips and what has to be done. I hope and pray that we shall have people held accountable for negligence. We shall have people held accountable and precedents set, because with commercialization of education, we know it is all about maximization of profit. And some people may not be willing, for example, to go an extra mile that goes into their profits to put some of these in place, unless there's an iron hand that is pushing. As we push for sensitization, we also must push for clear laws and punishments against some of these. Have a lovely day. Ruben is here to take you through sports updates. Good morning.
COVID-19 is still here with us. As Professor Maggie Chigozi states, the time is now for all of us to get vaccinated.
When we have one person who's not vaccinated, it affects everybody around them, most especially the ones close to you. Keep your family safe. Anyone right now who's over 18 should go and get vaccinated.
Because of the new COVID-19 circulating variants like Omicron, it is very important for all of us to be fully vaccinated with 2 doses of the same vaccine type. It's only those getting Johnson & Johnson who receive only a single dose to be fully protected.
Even after vaccination, continue to adhere to all SOPs by wearing a mask properly, covering your mouth and nose, washing your hands regularly with soap and clean water, or using an alcohol-based sanitizer, maintaining physical distance of at least 2 meters from others, and avoiding crowds. Echa COVID-19, chija kugwa. This message is from the Ministry of Health with support from UNICEF and partners.
There have always been hard times, but these days are harder than most. Everyone.
Live from Now Avenue in UBC Studios. This is Good Morning Uganda.